Sustainability. We always associate sustainability with the word environment. I was recently reminded by the author Carol Sanford that sustainability should maybe not use the word environment. Rather, environment by definition is that which surrounds ourselves, something that we are not necessarily a part of. And yet, if we take into the context of changing that word to ecology, ecology by definition comes from the word ecos. And the word ecos is the Greek word for home. So this is the study of our home. And so importantly, it places mankind in the system in a non-hierarchical order. So when we talk about the footprint on our planet, we've had Earth now we're taking now 1.5 Earths to continue to do what we're doing on this planet. And some people may blame population. That seems to be the greatest scapegoat. And yet this footprint that we're building is actually by the individuals in developed nations that are taking more than they need. And so the same population is also, the folks that are assuming that technology is going to be our driving savior. And we go about constantly thinking that this is going to be the one thing that will drive everyone into the betterment of the planet and that we're going to save the environment. Well, guess what? We're going to have to save ourselves in our system. 1 in 7 are still considered starving, 1 in 3 malnourished, and 1 in 6 do not have access to clean water. And that is very much correlated to the acts of being malnourished and starvation. The very thread that binds us all together and the one thing we need to survive is water. And so these repercussions that we've made because we live in a world that's actually connected is climate change. And water is not a finite resource, but what's happening is it's disappearing from where we're used to finding it. And we're seeing that not only here locally in the islands, we're seeing that on the mainland, we're seeing that in Asia, we're seeing that in Australia, it's everywhere. And this not only affects the livelihoods of the individuals, the farmers on the land, but this affects us all and our financial markets. And then you also have to think scientists are also projecting that we may get our entire annual rainfall in the possibility of just 2 storms a year. As these storms become greater and larger, we need to think about how are our water infrastructure systems designed, and are they resilient for the 21st century? Infrastructure in terms of our potable water supply and our wastewater systems stems way back 40 and even 100 years old, and it was based on the very premise for us to control the environment. So we design things to build communities in places where there aren't water and resources, so we take from one watershed, pump it, treat it, deliver it, flush it down the toilet, away it goes, pumping station, pumped, wastewater treatment plant, and then dumped into the oceans. Not only is that a wasteful process of taking water from one watershed into another and the ecological consequences that might have had on your streams and other communities, but it's also highly wasteful and highly energy intensive. And the same viewpoint of how we've mismanaged our water systems is we can relate to stormwater as well. Rain, as we always think, is a blessing. Yet when we design our cities, we see it as a liability. And we concrete it and we put it down the drain in a culvert out into the ocean. Trillions of gallons of water annually in Hawaii alone down the drain. Is this ecological? Does this make sense for our ecos, our home? I would argue no. So Albert Einstein has been quoted many times for saying, you can't solve problems using the same mindset used to create them. And so in comes ecological design, based on the very fact that nature does nothing uselessly. And by the billions of years of experience, we may, as a human race, be able to look into nature and its systems that it's been designing and evolving to better ourselves in the system. And so, for example, it's very worth noting indigenous cultures, and Hawaiians in particular. Indigenous cultures were derived by the ecosystems that they were from. and design their communities and engineer their systems based on their place. And that's very much true in the ahupua'a of the Hawaiians. And importantly also, the values of the Hawaiian culture incorporated very, very significant and sophisticated practices that recognize that they were part of the whole. One of these is called lokahi. And this was for them to live in harmony within the system, not only within the natural world that they resided, but also to the wider of the greater universe. And so you can argue that this was a moral code for Hawaiians to act in a balanced way and not control the resources. So importantly in ecological design, recognizing the intelligence and the wisdoms of thousands of years of knowledge is also to begin learning again the sense of place and designing with place in mind. A second principle is the idea of biomimicry. How can we look to nature that's been evolving for hundreds of millions of years and begin designing our technologies and our cities to be more efficient? How can we, for example, design like the tree? Net zero energy, net zero waste, net zero water. And importantly and thirdly, ecological design incorporates this idea of ecological services. Just like the human body, the earth has internal organs. If you want to think of the large vastness of the prairies and the forests, taking in carbon dioxide, spitting out oxygen, these are the lungs of the planet. Or the mycelium that hug the grounds following the trees and the forests. These are the nervous system transporting energy and water systems through the trees. And then you have things like the waters themselves being like the blood of the planet, regulating body temperature, again, transporting nutrients. And then there are the kidneys of the planet, the wetlands. This is where the bloodstream comes down the river, it slows itself down, water is filtered, nutrients are assimilated, pH is balanced, and as it leaves the system, it is purified. So as ecological designers, we want to start learning about water management. How can we turn to the intelligence of these sophisticated systems to begin really thinking about how we can design more sustainably in our own system? And so that's what's been happening. Engineers since the middle of the 20th century, and moreover really since the 1980s, really turned to ecologists to begin understanding these and applying them to the waters that we have impacted. And so this has happened from everything from wastewater treatment plants to managing stormwater systems through rain gardens and bioswales, to cleaning up our polluted canals here in Fuzhou, China, and as well as the management of water and energy resources on golf courses that also meet the triple bottom line. So what do all these things have in common? The one thing that everything has in common about this is that there's no such thing as waste in nature, because pollution is really just a resource out of place. You implement these systems, and where we think we've created impacted waters, we are actually providing the building blocks in a way that you can't even imagine, that starts from the microorganisms all the way to the fungi, to the higher plants and animals. And the byproducts of these systems is clean water, and also true eco-nomic development, financial markets that actually benefit our ecos, our home. This is a wastewater treatment plant where the byproducts are clean water, but it's also producing cut flowers for market, ornamental fishes. It's bringing in new businesses, such as this nursery business that can operate year-round, and also becomes an educational hub for a lot of the community for kids to come and learn. So taking all these concepts and back to that tree, we go to a single building. Reduce, the tree only takes the amount of water that it needs. It recycles water, it reuses water in the photosynthesis machine in the chloroplasts. It recharges water by driving down those roots and allowing for the water it does not need to recharge the groundwater and support the other ecological systems. And so it's regenerating itself while also regenerating the life support systems that sustain it. And so here's a building in San Francisco, just finished in July of 2012, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. It's reducing its water by high-efficiency low-flow fixtures, storing 30,000 gallons of rainwater to be reused back in the buildings for cooling towers and sinks. It has its wastewater treatment plant along the sidewalk of downtown San Francisco through a constructed wetland, and that water gets reused back in the toilet. It's managing up to 70% of its water on site. So you scale this up, how can we design like a watershed? How can we rethink our communities to a district level, these neighborhoods? How can we keep water within the watershed and understand that different industries and activities do not all require the same water quality of water? So we take these concepts of ecological design and we come back and we begin to really think globally and ecologically with our resources and us in the system. There may be hope for us to continue to exist in the system we live locally throughout the 21st century. Mahalo nui.